Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks out there. I'm glad you could join us in your silvered armor and holy weapons because today, yes, today and this week, we are talking about knights. And not just knights, but we're also talking about how to bring them into your tabletop RPG game. And today, this Discord Tuesday, we're talking about a number of things in relation to knights, deep diving, breaking them down. And let's begin with, first of all, that if you are not members of the Discord server, please do. You can join on in. There are no limitations in terms of posting links and the numbers and letters of amount of characters you can use in terms of participating. So yeah, hey Ivor. So please join a Discord server, and this is the only location on the interwebs in which you get a live broadcast 5 days a week from yours truly, unscripted, on Twitch, YouTube, and Discord, with the audio punching out the Discord all at the same time. Yes. So one yesterday on Monster Monday, we basically did an overview of what is a knight, or what are the core essential values of these individuals. And one thing that, of course, started very early, before the show even started, is this idea of breaking down some of the core elements of this what makes up these individuals in the first place. Okay, and there are a number of things. Of course, they are armed and armored. Maybe. Okay, for the most part, the population supports their endeavors. Maybe. But something that can't be denied is something brought up by, Gaz and Tesla Ranger over in the Discord, and that is a code of conduct, usually an oath, honor, and a devotion to a particular ideal, and the devotion to that ideal sets them apart from everyone else because oftentimes that devotion to the ideal is counter to maybe the behavior, either themselves or the public or even the leadership of where they live desires them to act in that way. Yeah. Thank you, Rickard. Talking about my intro. Rickard says, DBJ would be weird if there were another place that had you doing podcasts and streams 5 days a week without you knowing it. I don't know. Quantum physics, that's a possibility. Hey, Omen. Now, codes of conduct. More often than not, we know that there are codes of conduct amongst many others. What was brought up in the Discord was a code of conduct of the Wild West, the Wild West of the Americas, right? There's also piracy codes, and heck, you could even go today where there are codes of conduct in terms of gang affiliation. Most law enforcement and military, you pay homage to a code before you are accepted into those organizations, and so and you're expected to adhere to those codes of conduct. So in many ways, codes of conduct have always been around and have been modified, used, and changed over courses of history. So in your game, you could absolutely positively have codes of conduct. Now, we brought up the role-playing game Pendragon. I do not I very vaguely recall many of the codes of conduct in that game, in the sense that those codes were given statistics that you used in the game, and in many ways, some of them can become contrary to each other based on your actions. Yeah, Ivor brings up the Wild West Code. Yeah, quote: God created man. Yeah, but but Colt made them equal. Yeah, the Colt 45 and the six shooters. Yeah, the whole it is its own. Like I made the comparison to Samurai yesterday on Monster Monday. The Code of the Wild West is another one. Same thing again with piracy codes, and I guarantee you there are codes of conduct amongst other cultures in various time periods that have a close approximation to such a thing. So you can have knights in your game, and they're not dressed in silvered armor and riding upon horses and carrying banners that stream attached to the end of lances, right? It is just a placeholder in many ways. Caius of Glantry says the community supports a knight's endeavors, at least to the point that they financially support them. Knights live off the labors of others. They aren't farmers. Exactly. And the idea that the people support them, I think, is much different than, you know, the big bad evil guy who forces the community to serve their evil forces or something like that. The difference here is that using them in a game, even if they're adversarial to the PCs, is that the public supports them. And like Kaya says, financially. Now I understand in reality, the real life version of knights in the knighthood and Templars or Spartan warriors or Wild West marshals and bounty hunters and those kind of things may not meet the cinematic versions of them, but mixing and matching those traits, I think, really would help us in our games. Depending on it, like the people, for example, one community, the people are like fist in the air, yay, they're here. If you do something wrong, I'm going to tell on you and tell the knighted warriors that you're here, right? Whereas in another community, maybe that community has been stressed out because of financial support. And that financial support, of course, doesn't necessarily mean a coin, although it could be coin, but it could be more often than not, they were resources: wheat, rice, livestock, heck, even entertainment amongst the ladies, which is pretty horrible in IRL, but in cinematic terms, there could be maybe someone has to house them, and the locals, the civilians are put out because they have to house the local squad that's come into town or something like that. Yeah, I hear you. Ivor picks up his code at the table. Yeah, best code for me and my characters. Yeah, one, don't be an ass, and number two, look up number one. Yeah, of course. So, the for me, okay, I'm going to diverge here a little bit to talk about some of the items and weaponry and things that they're known to have, because I think that's the shorter part, and then we will go into codes of conduct and how we can mechanize some of those codes of conduct in the game, which was very easily brought up and intelligently brought up by Gaz and Tesla in the Discord. Okay, so another thing known for knights are essentially their outfits, right? Whether they carry some kind of identification, many of them are trained in particular types of skills and weaponry. I bring up the action comedy movies, The Kingsman, and The Kingsman something Golden Circle and whatnot. Like the 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 strangeness and the funniness and the the rated R comedy adventure movies that those were about, where you had the Kingsmen in the UK and you had the Statesmen in the United States, and so what kinds of weapons do they carry? Much like I brought up the silver armor and long swords. In Wild West, this was put in. I didn't create this. Was having mallets and firearms. A mallet to shoot you when you're far away. I mean, mallet. Jeez, a six shooter to shoot you when you're far away, and a mallet to break your ankles if you try to run for it after you've been captured. Right. So they could be spears or whips. If you have more of a tribalistic community, maybe they're known to carry a certain type of like a net and a spear or something. Although that sounds either aquatic or sounds gladiatorial. The movie 300, I suppose the Spartans could be counted as knights in their own time period, right? They had a code of honor. They were relatively well respected in their own community. They stuck together. They trained together, and that kind of thing. Yeah, Ivor talks about a family relic, like a sword that got all the achievements done by all who wear it, engraved on it by magic. So every wielder literally carries history in their hands. Oh, I love that. I I could even see, let's say you play a standard Dungeons and Dragons game, if you have the ability to pick spells, that those aren't your spells, but they are the actions of an ancestor acting on your behalf when you do such a thing. So it's maybe not you laying hands, but it could be an elder that comes down through you and your actions to heal the sick or something of that nature, which would be kind of a cool role playing concept as well. That you may be able to interact with some of your ancestors um, as a narrative trait when using your spell like abilities. Yep. Charlie Square says heraldry is your ID. Yep. Much like wearing a badge in the Wild West, you had your heraldic banner. Lots of people. I I still have my T-shirts from the when Game of Thrones was on the air. Not that people aren't interested in the books and whatnot, but in Game of Thrones they had banners, and they talked about the the young people learning the banners of the different houses and such. Kaya says in French and German the word for knight, ritter, or I'm going to say chevalier, means rider. They were horsemen, which is how they saw themselves. Yes, mounted combat is another thing that if you haven't pulled those rules out in a while, why not use them if the players themselves are acting in that best interest. Charlie Squared, you can actually post both links and or photographs, pics in the Discord server. YouTube and Twitch prevent you from doing that unless you are a known moderator or adjudicator over there. And Kaya says the English word knight comes from Old English. I'm going to pronounce that Naten, or could be Kauten, which meant retainer or kept men. The English of that time weren't knights, so this is how others saw them. Ah, yeah, absolutely. The opinions of the public and how they perceive them may be, in many ways, may be how the player characters act and or react to the people that they are either meant to protect or serve or create enforce the law for. And like I mentioned yesterday, one of the differences between playing a knight or a samurai or someone who upholds the law in the Wild West and that kind of thing. Yeah, I want to get to that list in a minute, Gaz. One of the things that separates them is in many ways they're not an antithesis to the law. They are the supporters of law and justice and the status quo. Now, of course, you can also turn that on its head, especially if it's a case of like the 47 Ronin, where the PCs are following a just and lawful just and lawful, noble, or house, and then the things get flipped on its head when someone is assassinated or someone passes away and a new ruler takes over and they are instructed to do things that are against their code. Charlie Squared says George of Lancaster is the dude with the finch on the white rose. I imagine. Ignore hair eye color. Can't see it under a helmet. Anyway, yeah. Um, yeah, that's funny. Oh man. I thank you there, Gaz. Ivor says for Wild West, old gun of an infamous bandit who uh were shot by his numerous crimes, so now possesses his soul. Ooh, ooh, ooh! I'm liking that. I'm liking that a lot. Yeah. Oh man. Mm-mm-mm. Oh, Charles, just made that up. I love that kind of stuff. You know, in a banner itself could say a lot for what the house stands for, or the nobility stands for, or what they serve, and oftentimes they were created that way with a rose or a blade, a wild animal, something in the background, whether they're fields or mountains, or maybe a river or ocean, sunrise, things of that nature. So now let's get into. Ivor says, "Hey, I DM Deadlands a lot. Common thing there. Yeah, gun possessed by a bandit, especially if it. I could imagine if there is some randomizer or something that comes after your soul that you see yourself. Maybe you have like a traumatic flashbacks of seeing yourself in the bandit's shoes performing these heinous and terrible acts against innocent individuals, even though you yourself are not, and then maybe waking up in cold sweats or something like that. Yeah. Charlie Square's making up some more like a coat of gold or a coat of red. A lion still has claws. Ooh, I love banners and things. So okay, so one thing mechanically, I'm and follow me down this deep dive here. Put on your scuba gear. Is the idea of making a mechanical effect of or mechanizing virtues and vices for different individuals. I mean, for the people in the game. So you have like chastity and temperance, and then you have the opposite vice, which would be like lust and gluttony. You know, diligence versus sloth, or kindness versus envy, and mechanizing those things. And they even put in you know, you could very easily make this a D20 kind of statistic, right? 13 versus 7, you know, 10 versus 10 or something like that. and make a successful roll. You act in the manner that is in accordance with your code of conduct. And if you fail, in a role playing sense, that might be a great way to describe what you do when you fail a particular role. Um, you know, for I just think that would be just a great thing, a great interaction in a game. Um, Mr. Spence says a pistol, the resting place of Charlie Clips, born born a coin clipper and a cheat, died in a blaze of glory so hot the devil couldn't chain his soul, and heaven shut the gates for 5 days and nights. Ooh, I love Deadlands. I haven't played it in years, but I love Deadlands. I love the idea of like you know the crossroads and a person's soul so tainted and evil that the devil kicked you out and stuff. Yeah. Heck, that's where the Marvel character Ghost Rider kind of like blends into that that idea. The first Ghost Rider movie, he met another Ghost Rider who rode on a flaming horse and whatnot. You know, I love that. I love that a lot. Ivor says, I don't think dice should decide it. Um, I that I think depends on the table in the sense that if some people that play games where your code of conduct is being tested will often, of course, default to their very best nature, right? Oh, of course I make the right decision, and of course I'm not. My guilt isn't. I can assuage my guilt because I did the right thing. It's the idea of killing the orc babies and orc pregnant women, right? Is it should you or should you not if you are a lawful good character and you are a knight or a paladin? And sometimes it's not a difference of making the decision to do it or not. It's also living with the consequences of having performed the very act that you performed in the first place. So, sure, could a knight go, I think it's just to kill the orc babies, and then feel guilt about it or horror, or turn themselves in to be punished for the crime that they committed, so on and so forth? Yes. Sometimes it's not a black and white thing. So I'm not disagreeing with you, Ivor, that I think dice shouldn't decide it. I think in many ways, sometimes you might be forced to have dice be the arbiter of such a thing. And it might not, of course, it might not be a 50-50 concept, right? If you're doing a D20 system and you have a 17 in I don't know truthfulness and a 3 in lies, then more likely you will tell the truth than lie in a situation where you must lie to defend yourself, right? Whereas in another that same instance, if you come upon a village and that village refuses to give you sustenance, but they want to know why you're doing it, and it's imperative upon you to tell them the truth, then if you have a 17-3 in truth and lies, then more likely than not, you will tell them the truth because it benefits you the most. You know what I mean? So you dice are randomizers, but it doesn't need to be so random that it's complete chaos in many ways. And of course, you could have like I brought up before, like you could have like a faith or duty mechanic where you have points that allow you like re-rolls or bonuses or things like that because um, this is a situation where, again, my character wants to tell the truth. Why wouldn't I tell the truth? Or you have a game master that's like, I'm not going to ask for a roll for every damn thing that you do, right? You want to tell the truth, fine, you go ahead and tell the truth. But if you want to lie, I might have to ask for you to make a roll or something of that nature. Again, not going 0 to 60. So I both agree and situationally disagree with you, Ivar, and that's a good thing. He responds with, "I prefer to give my players choice, quote, it can help you a lot, but it may go versus your code of honor, like a deal with the devil." And in Deadlands and in Blades in the Dark, they have a mechanic that is called a deal with the devil. It literally is a deal with the devil where I want to do the thing. I want to do the thing and I want to succeed at the thing. And it's like, okay, make a deal with the devil. Yeah, you get to do the thing, or you get to do the thing that's against your nature, or you get to do the thing successfully, but it's going to cost you in the long run. I believe this very mechanic is used in Fantasy Flight games for Star Wars with the light side, dark side mechanic. Right, player character uses a light side die, and they immediately give a dark side die to the game master. So I want to do the thing. I want to trust in the force. I want to use the light side. Great, you get to do it, but it may cost you later on. Kaya says codes of conduct are only interesting if they are difficult to follow. They should limit what you do. I absolutely agree with that. In terms of like bringing up the truth and lies thing, if your character is very truthful, it's very beneficial on one end. But if you're captured by the enemy and you are dressed in rags and tatters, and it is more beneficial for you to lie to your enemy than it may be very difficult for you to lie. Yeah, Tesla's like, yeah, the force die literally brings balance to the force. Yep, exactly. Um, Ivor says, wrong interpretation of force of force sides, in my humble opinion. Oh, force die. I listen. Don't. If nothing else, I get things wrong, but it is, and that's not how, of course, Star Wars the Force works, but it's how mechanically it's like, hey, I do a thing, and then it may cost me later. That's what I was making a reference to, not specifying exactly how the game works. um, Mr. Spin says, should you or should you not kill the younglings? Anakin begins to sweat profusely. Yeah, exactly. Or, should you kill the younglings? Yeah, sure, why not? As long as it's off screen, not a big deal, right? And then, of course, it costs that individual a thing. Especially, like, for example, let's go back to the truth and lies. Maybe the very truthful character begins lying more often than not, and then so maybe their statistic starts to move from one balance over to the other, that it becomes far easier for them to lie. Um, I hear you, Ivor. Like, the dark side is not the bad side. We can agree to disagree. I think narratively they portray it that way, or rather, there's an equal and opposite. Like, if you do bad things, the dark side is towards you, not necessarily the dark side first and then evil. Like it's weird. Doesn't matter. We're not going down that path. Kai says you must keep vigil the night before a holy day. No rest and a level of fatigue. Yeah, no rest and a level of fatigue on holy days. But maybe they also have an inspiration point because day is special to them. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I saw what you did there, Caius. Yeah, like a or maybe there's you have to keep vigil the day before a holy day, and something tempts them. Or what's the virtue? Diligence versus sloth, right? So, oh, you have to keep vigil for the entire day because everyone's preparing for the holy day. Make your diligence roll. Oh, you failed it, so now you were very slothful. And then the player character either, of course, role plays their diligence and or role plays their sloth, their laziness. You know what I mean? I kind of like that. Yeah, and Rickard says, yeah, yeah. Yeah, as far as the dark side is inherently corrupting, or yeah, and it's very much like, hey, do I kill the younglings? Yeah, I got to do it, and then that in itself puts you down the dark path. Very much like I would say, many positive virtues or positive virtues we would consider. The more you, the more it's necessary for you to break those virtues, the easier it becomes to break those virtues in the first place. So um, if it's necessary, like over here in the Discord, if it's necessary for you to be charitable, but if charity is a good thing, giving of your wealth and your time and your money, but in a number of situations, it requires you to take from the population to, say, fund the war effort, and you know that the people need their grain and their rice and their livestock, but it's also necessary for you to follow the instructions of the nobility. It's possible that you become. It's far easier for you to fall into, say, greed, um, to to take from others, and I like the idea of playing with that, because in many ways, like that, having challenges to your code is the other part, other than having challenges to, like, combat and things like that. Now, how easy would it be to bring those virtues into combat? I don't know, but you could have it could be an investment. So the more you engage your codes of conduct, the more benefits you have in combat. I think you could do that. Uh, Ivor says, actually, I got an idea for the next D&D. Like, hey, like, quote, hey, are you a knight with a code of honor? Um, but how about you actually play a bad guy in the story? Ooh, give them a choice. Yeah. Kill a spirit in nature because they're condemned by the church, but then it actually shows that their nature begins to decay in this area, so code or people suffering. So you could actually make a I could see that being the reason why a paladin is traveling with a rogue or an assassin, where the game starts out with the rogue or assassin being apprehended by the paladin, and then much like the movie 310 to Yuma, where a retired soldier is taking a notorious bandit in the Wild West to be imprisoned, taking, of course, being put on the prison train, the 310 to Yuma train, and then during their travels to get there, certain things happen. The honorable soldier, his code of honor is challenged, and the bandit without a code of conduct is learning to get a code and stuff like that. So, could be kind of cool. Kaya says, if you have mechanics for virtues or vices, you have to keep within a bracket for each, or lose your powers or place in the order. It goes on to continue to say, I like that Pendragon had different desirable virtues depending on the religion you followed. Pride is a vice for Christians, but a virtue for pagans. See, I like that idea as well, because you could bring in what would be considered in this world a motley crew of individuals together, and like I mentioned before, it's been a long time since I flipped the pages of the Pendragon role playing game, and it's passed through a number of hands, been reprinted and all that kind of stuff. But various virtues could very well benefit individuals on one hand and then limit people on another hand, because they don't have those virtues. So I really like that. Mrs. Spencer says, for a modern example, military boot camps break down recruits and enforce the morals of temperance, diligence, and humility. Temperance in the scheduled training and measured meals. Yep. Diligence in making your bed and shining your damn shoes, as well as weapon maintenance. And communal upkeep of facilities, and humility in the constant smashing of ego. The vice being unique in that their wrath is tempered by their virtues. Ooh, I like that. I love I had a martial arts instructor that talked about the virtues of the samurai, because it was known that the samurai were not just warriors, but they also had to indulge in or learn peaceful traits, whether it was flower arranging, dance, haiku, poetry, um, other kinds of artistry, singing, calligraphy, and those kind of things. So the issue would be making sure that there is a significant amount of conflict when it comes to using those virtues in whatever role-playing game you use, which is why maybe Dungeons and Dragons may not be the best game for it, although the Dungeon Master's Guide does have rules for using honor and renown in the game, and honor and renown may be the only ways to say um, gain not gain levels, but gain the benefit of using certain things like hit dice or recouping your spells or something like that to combine the two, because honor and renown wouldn't really be used in combat, but it may allow someone to gain inspiration for use in combat, so on and so forth. Yeah. uh, oh, really? I didn't know that you couldn't input that. Yeah. Cool. Insert instructor quote, full metal here. Can't myself because Twitch and the channel rules. I didn't realize. That's weird. Okay. Kaya says, I'm talking about my memory about the first edition of Pendragon, so what I say may not be truthful representation of the current game. Doesn't matter. If the game exists, it's truthful for that game anyway. There are no edition police going out there snatching up all the first edition games. But you do make a point in the sense that you could, mechanically speaking, because Discord Tuesday tends to be more of our mechanical talks, that words and titles, both as a knight, because we're talking about honor, and in role playing games, are very significant. And by renaming or reflavoring something, I think has a lot to do with how we interact with the thing that we're talking about. Let me be very specific. If Dungeons and Dragons changed the words armor class and hit points and changed them, much like many other games change them, I think we would have a different outlook. For example, you could change the six classic stats, right? Strength, dex, con, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. You could change those statistics to more to better embrace this idea of honor and codes of conduct. For example, you could, instead of having strength, you could have diligence or perseverance. Maybe perseverance would be a better descriptor than constitution. Dexterity could be something else. Wisdom itself, although wisdom sounds pretty good, could be something you could reskin and rename them. So instead of armor class, it could be called faith. Instead of say hit points, it could be called something like I don't know, stress or deliverance or something. In the sense that and by reskinning and reflavoring things, maybe it's not so much a character surviving physical attacks, right? Maybe they're already badasses and they're already like, I can survive a fight. But maybe it's their ability to remain true to themselves in the face of danger, like a soldier suffering psychological harm and wanting to give up the fight, to give up the ghost in terms of like, I can't do this any longer. So it may not be physical harm that they're suffering, but maybe it's more of a psychological harm that's happening to them. In order for them to get back into the fight, they have to basically re-up their, reinvigorate their statistics in terms of like chastity and honor and faith and things like that to get back into the game again. Ivor says, I remember one of our games, I made a paladin of tier, and in his order there were arms master. Oh, there was an arms master elf, the biggest ass in the world. Oh man! Like when new recruits show up first, he used every dirtiest and cheapest trick he could in a fight to beat him to dust. His reason was you expect the criminals. Oh, you expect criminals will fight by the duel's code. That's another thing too, in terms of like honorable fights versus like dirty fighting. Um, a big aspect of honor is the idea of fighting in an honorable manner. Fighting on a field, having a duel. Even the gunslingers and samurai had duels. Six shooters at 12 o'clock high, that kind of thing, right? What's the movie? The Quick and the Dead. When the clock strikes 12. Yeah, like Tesla says, you cheated, pirate, right? Cheated. It'd be more surprising if I don't cheat, right? And what is it? Flintlocks and sabers or something like that. So having I would even include the idea of having combat where it's not strange for people to have duels. It's actually the norm, and maybe you have to, or there are certain individuals that are able to not specifically duel their enemies and such. Heck, even you can even go back as far as like the idea of Spartans and legionnaires having one-on-one fights with, the head leaders of both armies or something. Or attack of two nations is decided by the fight of three of their best knights against three of their other greatest warriors on a dusty field, or on mounted combat in a valley, while both armies, look upon seated on the field, cheering for their greatest warriors or something of that nature. I think that's actually kind of a really cool thing, especially even if mercy is given. So the players attack the trolls, and they pin the troll down, and the troll, like, of course the trolls heal because they're not being burned or splashed with acid, but the trolls have been defeated, and they adhere to the rules of mercy, or maybe they don't adhere to the rules of mercy. So now it's okay to like burn and acidify them, acidify them, or something. I don't know. I think the interaction would be really cool to have a world in which maybe on World Building Wednesday we'll talk about that. I don't know. Um, Kaya says, if powers in a game come from a code, a relationship or a pact, should the player or GM be the one who decides if the PC is failing to an extent it affects their powers? I'm a lot harsher on my characters than my GMs are. Well, that was one of the issues of why the Paladin became the lawful stupid character. It was either from advanced D&D on, it was either a player character trying to be a Dudley Do-Right to the point of being ridiculous and stereotypical, or it was the 45-minute arguments at the table when the player steals bread to feed a starving family, and then everyone jumps down on the characters like, you're supposed to be lawful good, you can't steal, and then 45 minutes breaks out, and somebody wants to table flip and that kind of thing. I personally don't like the idea of one individual choosing if and or when something happens, unless there's a lot of trust, right? Because unfortunately, sometimes our own bias can come into it. And I mean an out of game bias, whether we have a relationship with that person or not, whether we like that person's behavior, whether we think they are disruptive at the table. I would prefer a gaming statistic, whether it's an expended resource, like I have 10 points of I have 10 points of honor and justice. I'm down to 3 points of honor and justice. Therefore, every time I roll this D10, if I roll below it, I'm cool. But if I roll above it, there's a good chance that I'm not going to be that way. So I like either expending a resource or using a die roll, but having a way to modify that die roll, or like a deal with the devil, thing where I am more likely than not to choose one course of action. If I choose to go against it, I invite the GM gets to increase a threat meter against my character, or something of that nature. And since we are talking, this is Discord Tuesday, so we are talking mechanics anyway. So it's not that I think one is better. I Ask me in another week, I'll probably change my mind. but at the moment, a mechanic that reinforces what the game is about. I like that. Lots of players are actually far harsher on their characters than GMs, despite the fact that there's a myth that players are always trying to get over. I would say consult any any critical failure roll, any critical failure chart, and tell a player to describe a critical failure for themselves. And more often than not, they'll be harsher than even most game masters, even though the myth is out there that that's not the case. So, no, I don't know. Ask me in a week. Ask me in an hour, probably. Ivor says, quote, um, uh, oh yeah, when you were in a night raid in the dirtiest part of the docks, You should remember one thing: there's no honor amongst the thieves who thought different. Never, never left the docks. You will hate me, but you will survive. Yeah, that's all that I care is code. I like the idea of like a person training the honorable ones. Like, listen, I'm from the docks. I'm from the street. You better expect the unexpected. And as a matter of fact, there's this image of the knights lining up on a battlefield. Shoulder to shoulder on mounted warriors. And there's also the idea, of course, on the opposing side, where they're hiding in the woods. They're using hit and run tactics. They're using guerrilla tactics and things. And in many ways, like I could see a statistic to, could the paladin refuse to fight in an honorable manner and try to fight in a dishonorable honorable manner? Sure, I could see that. Or a dishonorable character fighting in a way that best reinforces or is an example of being an honorable combatant. I'm looking at you, Bronn, from the television show Game of Thrones. Right? Here's a guy who's like, yeah, he fought honorable. He's dead. Yeah, sure, I fought dishonorably, but look at me, I'm alive, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? So there is a lot of that, and having your players be on the same page, right? No point in trying to convince your players to play characters who have a lot of honor, only for them to try to break it every time they get a chance. It doesn't make much sense. Now, as adversaries in a game, if you want to have these knighted individuals adversaries, that would work, especially if the players are like from a city of thieves, but there are these honorable people trying to reinforce the law, and they are operating under a specific code. That might be the weakness for the players to try to get around what they're doing. But the players may also fall into their hands because the population is, they're not on the side of the scoundrels, they're on the side of the law enforcers. So, being far more stealthy, being careful, knowing who to bribe, who to lie to, who to cheat, could come back and bite them in the ass because, of course, the virtue of the virtue of those who are in the streets or on the docks or something is to lie and cheat and backstab, whereas the people that they're lying and cheating and backstabbing to might feel some way about it, and it could a particularly failed roll may come back and bite them in the ass. Making that deception roll may work, but it may also leave a scar that lie to me one more time, and I'm calling the authorities. And the PC tries to do it yet one more time, and then boom, you're turned in. I could also see, I believe, like for example, in the game Exalted, they had there was like a limit break where you get to play your character, but at a certain point, you just can't hold back not performing just and honorable acts. So it was almost kind of like a limitation in a way, where you would see people being harmed and abused, and despite the fact that you were hiding under a cloak and trying to blend in with the crowd, you just had to do something to save these people. So it's also possible that these codes of conduct could be a limitation in which you engage in your limit of being honorable and just, air quotes there, of course, as I normally do at least once per show. It could be that you fall into good habits while trying to perform evil habits, much like I would say the 47 Ronin, or Knights Without a Lord or Leader, or Wild West marshals or bounty hunters that are out there in the wild and trying to deny their more just and honorable side by engaging in horrible and deceptive acts to survive, but just can't keep doing it, and then maybe just maybe it might be the thing that that forces them to tell the truth, or forces them to give mercy, or forces them to um, give of their valuable goods over to someone who needs it more than them. You know. Yeah, yeah, or Warhammer Inquisition style. Yeah, yeah, Ivor. Yep, yeah. Cheat, bribe, be a douche. All works if it works. You know, and of course that's a default, right? You know, um, especially in our modern day society. You know, despite the fact that people who have honorable intentions are somewhat respected, everyone's like, oh, I'm out for myself. You know, which is an easy default. Which, if you want to embrace that, yeah, yeah. Mrs. Spencer was like, urge to do justice rising. Yeah. Although it does kind of fit in, you know, especially if the players are the few honorable people in the world of death and destruction, much like, oh, I don't know, a world like Mad Max or something, you know. It could be something like that. Yeah. Yeah, marshals should always travel in twos. A partner to keep you honest and your actions just. Nothing is more suspicious than a marshal traveling alone. Something happened to his partner. Ooh, I like that. Traveling in twos, you know. Can we say lone wolf and cub, or any derivation thereof? You know, the you know what? It would benefit me to start slaughtering people, but I gotta look out for my little young one here. You know, I don't want to teach him the wrong lessons. You know, after having a world of that, which would be kind of a cool. I think that would be a really great narrative element. Like, you have this thing that you travel thing, and I listen. It might be a person, it might be a place, it might be a thing, it might be a photograph, a family heirloom, a carved toy for a lost child or something. Sorry if I bring up anything that's particularly. I should have prefaced this by bringing up anything particularly sensitive to anyone out there. I don't mean to make light of it, but yeah, Spencer says your burden, your ward, right? Yeah, yep. God of War 4, where he's got the child with him. I could imagine the players have to pick a thing that is a physical manifestation of their code of conduct that they reference when their code is being challenged, like a small wooden toy that was carved for a lost child, right? And that player character starts performing more and more evil acts, and then realizes, you know what, I really should cut the throat of this person, but I can't. As they sit there in a campfire at night, with a small silken scarf wrapped around this small wooden toy that's in their pocket. Yep, Deadman puts out the Judge Dredd code. Yep, I am the judge, jury, and executioner. I am the law. If I can speak it like Sylvester Stallone. Yep, paladins, aka justice dispensers. Yep. Oh yeah. And Omen says that's taken literally with the Codex Astartes in 40K. I don't remember that. I don't remember that at all. Although I'm not a 40K specialist, so, but yes, there might be a physical location or an object or an individual that travels with the person, right? And imagine you have a ward that travels with you, and that ward represents a number of points for your character. So let's say your character's traveling with a young squire, or a sibling, or even a known elder that might be like half blind, or crooked of back or something like that. Um, yep, like Sun Tzu's Art of War. Yeah, yep. Yeah, the Art of War. Oh man. Deadman says travel in pairs in the judge's code. I didn't know that. I didn't know that was a code in the Judge Dredd. Well, Dredd him the 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 judge known as Dredd is his own character. But yeah, given a partner or something, maybe that partner represents a number of points. Let's say that partner is equal to 5 points. Every time you do something that's against your code, the points represented in that partner go down 4, 3, 2. When you get to 1 or you get to 0 points, that partner is like, I'm going to tell on you. I don't like you anymore. I am. Deadman says it is discussed in the latest movie, not the Judge Dredd movie, which sucks. The movie known as Dredd. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh man. Yeah, Mr. Spence. Yeah, the Codex Astartes is like a choose your own adventure book, but each option has at least 11 possibilities, all of which are brutal, which lead you to yet more possibilities, all of which seem like they're impossible to follow. Yeah. So it could get a little ridiculous if you're traveling with someone that somehow never seems to get hurt, although you could establish that instead of hit points, you have a follower. And so it's your follower that's suffering the mental and psychological harm, not you. And so when your follower goes down, it numerically is as if your characters drop to 0. So that you are quote unquote out of the game because you're tending to your follower, and your follower is the one that chastises you for performing evil and heinous acts, until you are able to make amends to the person that you are teaching or taking care of, or not looking bad in the lights of your ancient mentor, who sees you performing these acts, much like Wolverine protecting Charles Xavier. Maybe the character Wolverine, who claims to not have a code of honor, which Wolverine does. Wolverine's code of honor is very Western, very cowboyish Western, and maybe the Wolverine's character actually has written on the character sheet psychic abilities listed as Professor X, right? Like Professor X isn't a character; he's just an aspect of the character of Wolverine in this particular gamified thing that allows the Wolverine character to do a thing as long as he is portraying himself in an honorable manner in the eyes of Xavier. Oh wow, I like that. I like that in Discord. Anyway, guys, we are coming to the end of yet another episode of RPG with DBJ. Yes, if you are out there and you are bored, you are alone at home, away, keeping away outside, keeping your social distance, making sure you are washing your hands, wearing your masks, getting groceries, and holding up inside of your home, maybe, just maybe, you need something to buy the time away. Maybe a live stream for an hour each day, Monday through Friday. Maybe that's the thing that you need to buy the time away. Maybe you're bored from watching the daytime soap operas, or I don't know, Maury Povich or something like that, and you're like, you know what? If I'm going to bother having my brain cells destroyed, maybe, just maybe, I could turn on my YouTubes or my Twitches or log into Discord and listen in to RPG with DBJ. But just remember, I myself am not the brilliant one. It's all the people that participate in this show. So you yourself can be one of those who bring your best, your A game, your most creative self to this show. And if it's not for you guys, I really wouldn't really have a show to begin with. So thank you all out there. By the way, as placed in, sorry, ooh, that surprised me a little bit there, nosy nose. Just to let you know, in the Twitch, hosted in Twitch by fellow participant and moderator, Deadman, and also down in the doobly-doo, the information, the meat below in YouTube, you can find any and all the links necessary to participate even further. So guys, thank you very much. I'm a contributing writer to Critical Hit Publishing, and your self-appointed third pillarist out there, please join me for World Building Wednesday tomorrow. Everyone, have a great day. I'll see ya. Bye. I froze a little bit there. Wow. It's weird.